Hey guys, welcome back to Good Drive. Today we're test driving the ID4. Now a few weeks back we got the chance to take a look at it, but today we're actually able to take it on the road.
We're really curious how it drives, how it feels, how it compares to other EV SUVs crossovers in this class. So let's find out how it drives.
Volkswagen ID4 is arguably Volkswagen's most important car of the year. It marks Volkswagen's entry into the electric car market. The ID4 First Edition starts at $45,000, has a range of 250 miles and 201 horsepower. The car looks great from the outside. It looks futuristic but not outlandish. Both the trunk and the rear passenger area are quite spacious, making this car very practical. The interior is minimalistic and fun. The first edition has an all-white interior and it does look clean. We aren't sure if it'll get dirty easily with constant driving. The giant panoramic roof gives a great view for the passengers. The small screen in front of the steering wheel displays essential information for the driver. The main infotainment system wasn't as fluid as we liked, but they made big improvements since the release. Many of the buttons are touch sensitive instead of physical buttons. Instead of having 4 window controls, it has 2 and a rear button. First edition offers some unique features such as the gas and brake pedals, their play and pause buttons, which is kinda cute. One noticeable difference between the ID4 and the Model Y is that the ID4 does not have a frunk. Another interesting thing about the ID4 is that the rear brakes are drum brakes. Now we're gonna take the Volkswagen ID4 for a spin.
So it's got like a little bit of like artificial sound, but it's mainly for the outside, so you don't really hear it when you're accelerating. It's not like a Taycan or something where there's the sports sound. So I actually like that. I don't think you need to add noise to anything. The ride compromise, like the ride plus the handling compromise, I think it's like fairly well judged. It's not as like overly sporty as the Mach E. I think the Mach E, for me, like it drives great, but it's like a little firm, so some people might not like that. Whereas this car is pretty compliant still. So I think for most people, they probably prefer this. Obviously, yeah, the Mach E drives a lot more like sporty and aggressive, but I think for most people this is perfectly fine.
So fit and finish is really nice. The steering wheel is actually quite soft. The material is very premium. The whiteness of everything looks very clean and modern, and the display, the numbers are very bold and big, so it's very easy to read. One interesting part about the Volkswagen Drive feature is that it cruises instead of regenerating braking, so it doesn't slow down, and it's either because they think this is more efficient or it's because it's easier to get used to transferring from a gasoline car to electric car. So there is a bead mode on the gear shifter here, and that's where you can turn on the regenerative braking. Alright, so we just finished test driving the Volkswagen ID4, and here are our thoughts.
So I think it lived up to expectations for me. It has like the sense of Volkswagen, but like it doesn't drive exactly like a Volkswagen, and I think that's because, you know, it's the drivetrain configuration is different, right? It's rear-wheel drive. The motors in the rear, so versus, you know, most Volkswagens now are, you know, front engine, front wheel drive. So you definitely get a sense of playfulness, I would say, but it's not like overtly sporty. You know, it's just enough to make it feel lively, but like it's still more comfort oriented. Like there's definitely a little bit of body roll when you know, turn into corners, and but when you go through, like, you know, speed bumps and things like that, it cushions the ride. You don't feel, it doesn't feel jarring. Like I think in the Mach E, like, I don't know if you felt it, Jerry, but like I felt the ride was very busy.
Right, it was
like,
a lot sportier.
Yeah, it was a lot sportier. Like the damping is like much stiffer. So I like the steering a lot in the ID4. Like the steering was very direct and quick. The steering, the turning radius is like ridiculous. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We were driving through, at the end of the drive we had to go through a parking garage, and I actually turned into the wrong part but it was like a very sharp angle, and like I made it. Like it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was trying to navigate in this underground parking lot, and there are a lot of very narrow turns, and yeah, I handled it very well. I wasn't, you know, afraid of hitting the curb at all. So the turning and the nimbleness is very impressive. Very easy to drive.
Yeah. So it turns out when I drove it, I was in eco mode the whole time. So like maybe that's why it didn't feel as like sprightly. But Jerry, you had it in sport mode, right? How did that feel for you?
Yeah, so when I drove it, we found the sport mode and we did a U-turn, and I pressed it a bit, and the back actually kicked out a bit. So I was pretty impressed. You know, it's pretty fun to drive.
Yeah.
And it has enough torque to spin the wheels, if you want to, of course. I don't think most people who buy this car are looking for that.
Yeah, they have like Tanner Faust in the commercials, like drifting it around Willow Springs. Like not necessarily a drift machine, but I think it's enough to have fun with.
Yeah.
So.
And the car segment that the ID4 is targeting is the RAV4 and the CR-V. It's not the Tesla Model Y, although that's probably the closest competitor to it right now.
Yeah, I think for people that don't care so much about like performance per se, they care about, you know, practical features, things like that. I think the ID4 is definitely a contender. There's some like weird ergonomic things like the switch, like the window switch and the mirror controls. They kind of cheaped out. So instead of having like 4 window switches like you normally would, there's like a button that says rear that you got to touch to change the windows from like front to back. So like I think that's a little annoying. That's like kind of like cost cutting that like doesn't need to be there. But I don't know, you probably get used to it. I just like how things are like, they feel very familiar to you immediately.
Yeah.
Like all the displays, all the controls, like just very easy to approach. Like nothing's weird other than that window switch. Like everything just kind of falls closely to hand. Yeah. That's like not always the case with other brands. For me, I forgot to talk about this during the drive, but the massage seats, you know, I gotta give it props.
Just most wanted feature.
Yes, the number one feature that I look for in every car. I was actually like, the massage seats, they work actually like better than you think they would. They mainly use the lumbar, but like you actually do feel it, and it goes quite far up your back. So like it's, you know, it's not Bentley massage seats or it's not Porsche massage seats, but like it's pretty good for the price point. Like I don't think you find massage seats
on a RAV4.
Yeah.
Or
So
CR-V.
So at this price point, like there's no competition. So like major props to that. I know this is silly, but like for long drives, I do think it like really helps with your alertness. Mm-hmm. Between the ID4 and the Mach-E, they're kind of better at different things. The ID4 seems to have more legroom, but the car is a bit narrower than the Mach-E, so you have like less room between, you know, passengers. So I guess it depends on if you're gonna have people,
yeah,
like 3 people in the back a lot, or like if you have car seats, I think it's something to consider. The ID4's trunk seems deeper to me than the Mach-E's, but then it's probably a little bit narrower.
Yeah, because the ID4 is narrower, I felt it was easier to drive than a Mach-E, especially, you know, in the city.
I would really like to try the fast charging and see how it works. Like, because Electrify America, the one experience I had with it was not great. At least to start. So like I would really like to see, like, for these, you know, the mainstream brands, how they charge overall. Like I think the true test is like a road trip.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, and let us know what you think about the ID4. You know, if it's a car that you consider, or do you feel it's more a competitor to like normal CUVs like the RAV4 CR-V, or like do you think people will actually cross shop to another EV instead? Yeah, so let us know in the comments below, and like and subscribe if you haven't done so already.
Again, this is Jerry
and Jeff
signing off.